Bless or bless him. And if there is something you can invest in, he said the earth takes shape like clay to the seal when it's pressed in. Heaven stretched out like a tent to rest in. The sky is the limit.
No, literally could the firmament hit you, yeah. The sky the limit.
Welcome to Kingdom of Context. I'm Sean Griffin. I want to thank you for joining us tonight. We're having an incredible watch party tonight, checking out one of WesBlazeMuzik's new premiere videos. I think it's going to be fascinating. You don't want to miss this one. Definitely don't want to miss this one. So without further ado, it's premiering in about 7-8 minutes. Let's bring on WesBlazeMuzik. How you doing, brother?
Shabbat shalom from under the seven domes. It's good to be here, bro. Long time no see.
Yeah, it's good to have you back on. And we have a surprise cameo tonight, hailing from Georgia, Mr. Josh Key from the FEB.
What's up, family? This
What's
is
up,
exciting. First watch
This is
party
great.
ever.
This is. In fact, I got the party music. Let's see if it'll play. No, it ain't gonna play. Never mind. I got this new mixer, and I'm still trying to work it out. Trying to figure out how to get the sound effects to play.
The record player.
Let's see. Can you hear it?
Yeah.
There we go.
Nice.
So watch party music, guys.
A little cheering.
Yeah. So Wes, before we play this video, let's have you cue it up a little bit for us, shall we?
Yeah, sure.
This
So for
This
any,
is the video that we're going to be watching tonight.
that's right. That's right. Yep. That's No Moon, number one. The Crucifixion of Christ is the title of this little episode. Just for anyone who follows along with my posts, you might notice my tendency to fixate on certain topics for sometimes weeks in a row, right? So where I attempt to provide an exhaustive account of all relevant information in a series of teachings, and then I'll shelve the topic for a while and come back to it to see what else I can learn and share. But ever since Sean blew my mind with investigating Babylon, I've repeatedly returned to the subject only to continue uncovering more relevant information. So when I was reminded of the idea that the sun was darkened during Christ's crucifixion, I decided to dig in some more. And I feel like I found a treasure trove of historical accounts in the process. So we're going to look at, the chronicles of Emperor Guangwu of the first century of the Chinese Han Dynasty, and how he potentially accurately prophesied an account of Christ's death, like the spirit of prophecy dropped on him and he wrote about it without knowing about him. And maybe we'll discuss some of that more. And there's a lot of stuff in there that's really fun to look at. And we'll just start off with a verse here, Jeremiah 50, verse 2. It says, this is what the Lord says, tell the whole world and keep nothing back, or as other versions will say, is tell the Gentiles, or spread it among the nations. It says, raise a signal flag to tell everyone that Babylon will fall. Her images and her idols will be shattered. Her gods, Bel and Marduk, will be utterly disgraced. And for fans of investigating Babylon, or if you've seen Uncommon Ground, you would recognize those names as monikers for Satan and the beast, right?
Yeah.
And Babylon will fall. We know that to be true. See that all over Revelation, don't we?
That's right.
Amen.
That's right. So a lot of people, if you're new to this concept, you're going to get kind of exactly what I did not want to happen with investigating Babylon, is to get the end of the conclusion without the build up, without the foundation. But we are going, because we're talking about historical concepts tonight. I figured we got to put this video on blast. We got to let people know. Wes did a great job researching and digging up some obscure and unknown quotes from history to help us give their perspective on how they viewed these things happening in the heavens, with the idea of the eclipse, and specifically around the time of Christ's death. Which, honestly, growing up in church, guys, let me know if you had a different experience. But growing up in church, I never heard pastors talking about an eclipse happening during the crucifixion. Did you guys hear that?
Never.
I heard one video like back in 2018, 2019, where a gentleman named Herb Kirster or something like that. Kirsten, we'll see it on the video, where he mentioned the Chinese emperor that I was just talking about, how he, from 4,500 miles away, potentially accurately prophesied and witnessed this eclipse. However, it had left my mind completely. And then, since learning about the Mother Babylon and all that we've talked about, I kind of revisited the topic and remembered, oh yeah, there was that mention. And it struck me as odd, because we've said it before, even when we did Mothership Babylon episode of Uncommon Ground, we said that, scripture is kind of silent about solar eclipses. But there is this verse in Luke, especially in the account of Luke 23. And in a lot of translations, it'll just say the sun was darkened. But there are some other translations that will say something like the sun was hidden or obscured. And that's a little specific. And
Yes.
could very well have meant a solar eclipse, but there's a lot of fun details about the historical accounts that would lead one to make some conclusions like I did in this video that I'm excited for people to hear about.
Nice. Yeah, this is what's interesting. I just honestly, I just assumed it was clouds all my life. I really did, specifically because it was for 3 hours. The darkness was over the land for 3 hours. And you're going to talk about this in this video we're going to watch, and how that doesn't line up with the average eclipse time. So it's very interesting. There's a lot of points that we're going to get to discuss in this. And so we're going to try not to stop it too much. But there's definitely some interesting spots where we might want to talk a little bit before we pick back up. So I'm excited about it. Big thanks to everyone that's in the live chat tonight, all the moderators that are here helping keeping things going. I appreciate you guys for being here as always. Y'all are so faithful. It's amazing. And Josh, bro, tell us what's up with you. You got 60 seconds before the premiere begins.
I have decided to make a life change and pursue online teaching biblical earth and life science classes with Creation Standard. It's going to be
awesome.
A rapid change of pace, but it's going to be a blessing. It's going to be the most work I've ever done, but it's going to be, I think, the most, blessed I've ever been with the product of the work that I'm making, for sure.
Man. I hope to have you on so you can kind of give me a full breakdown.
Yeah, we're starting to see a vision. So it's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm excited. It's consuming me now. I forget that I have other things to do, but I'm excited about it.
That's exciting. Yeah, we definitely need those resources, man.
Amen.
So, cool. Definitely we'll be praying for you that you are well supported as you've stepped out of your regular job. That's what I heard you say, right? And you went full time into this, and so, which is what it requires in order to make it successful and a good resource for us. So, I'll definitely be praying. I'm sure the Father's going to bless you. Yeah,
I'm going to be needing your help, all of you guys.
That's right.
Sure.
That's right. It sounds like it's going to be an incredible thing to find on Lighthouse. So we are at 7:14. Let's go ahead and.
There's probably going to be a countdown too, just how they do on the premiere.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So I don't remember if it's 60 seconds or 2 minutes, but nonetheless, I'm happy for you, Josh. I'm excited for what the Father has in store for you.
Yeah, it was all him.
There's a big demand for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was terrified, but he gave me some peace about it and guiding. He's definitely guiding my steps to do this, because it's going to take full attention. I can't do it part-time. Definitely not.
Shout out Mashakim. Yeah, Christian Butterball actually helped me find some clips that I used to put this video together, so shout him out.
And he was saying,
Jesus, remember me when you come in your kingdom.
And Jesus said to him,
Truly I say to you today, you shall be with me in paradise.
It was now about the 6th hour, and darkness fell over the whole land until the 9th hour, because the sun was obscured. And the veil of the temple was torn in two. And Jesus, crying out with a loud voice, said,
Father, into your hands I commit my spirit.
Having said this, he breathed his last.
Hope you got your things together. Hope you are quite prepared to die. Looks like we're in for nasty weather. One eye is taken for an eye. Don't go round tonight, well it's bound to take your life. There's a bad moon on the rise. I hear it's bound to take your life. There's a bad moon on the rise.
This record is dated 31 AD, and it's in the history of the latter Han dynasty, and there's the reference. The imperial edict reads, yin and yang have mistakenly switched, and the sun and the moon were eclipsed. The sins of all the people are now on one man. Pardon is proclaimed to all under heaven. They knew nothing about Jesus, and this is dated 31 AD. They knew nothing about Jesus Christ, but in their soul, in their spirit, they felt that this sudden eclipse of the sun, unexpectedly, meant that the sins of people were pardoned and had been placed on one man. That's amazing, isn't it? And then it goes on to say, the eclipse on the day of Gui Hai, man from heaven died. How did the Chinese people know this? There in China, Jesus Christ was being crucified in Jerusalem. They knew nothing about it. But in their records, when they saw this eclipse, these imperial astronomers wrote, man from heaven has died.
There is still some debate over whether this darkness was supernatural or simply an eclipse. Interestingly, the Greek pagan historian Thales confirms the biblical account that darkness totally covered the land at the time of the Passover in the year we now call AD 32. Now, Thales published this information only 20 years after the resurrection of Christ. While this is a powerful extra-biblical historical confirmation of what happened that day, he believed this darkness to be a result of a solar eclipse. Thales, however, was no astronomer. A North African Christian leader by the name of Julius Africanus mentions Thales in his writings in AD 215. Julius says, "This darkness Thales calls, as appears to me without reason, an eclipse of the sun. For the Hebrews celebrate the Passover on the 14th day, according to the moon, and the Passion of our Savior falls on the day before the Passover. But an eclipse of the sun takes place only when the moon comes under the sun. Any astronomer will tell you the same thing. A natural solar eclipse was not possible on the day of Christ's crucifixion." This account of Jesus' death in Luke 23 leaves us wondering what exactly caused this darkness. Can this darkness be explained astronomically, or was it a completely supernatural event? Jumping immediately into an astronomical explanation would lead us to suspect a solar eclipse. While an eclipse of the sun may seem to make the most sense, it does not line up with the timing of Jesus' crucifixion. Jesus was crucified at the time of the Passover when the moon was in its full phase. Since the moon was at the exact opposite side of its orbit, a solar eclipse would not be possible. There is also another problem with the solar eclipse theory. The Bible says that the darkness lasted 3 hours, but the maximum time that the sun can be eclipsed is only 8 minutes. Since this concept of having darkness while the sun is still shining cannot be explained astronomically, we can come to the conclusion
that's no moon.
One of those weird stories is the darkness that happened during Jesus' crucifixion, which is recorded in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Here's Mark's account. He writes, "And when the 6th hour had come, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. And we're not even sure what the darkness was. Was it a solar eclipse or some other natural or supernatural occurrence?" Tertullian, writing in 197 AD, says this event also was in the Roman archives. Maybe he was referring to Thales' writings. It's a very interesting question. Tertullian wrote, "In the same hour too the light of day was withdrawn, when the sun at that very time was in his meridian blaze. Those who were not aware that this had been predicted about Christ no doubt thought it was an eclipse. You yourselves have the account of the world portents still in your archives." Tertullian does mention Thales by name in the same work in his Apologies. It takes a lot of guts or a lot of stupidity to challenge skeptics to look into the archives to corroborate this event if it didn't happen. For these reasons, it seems more probable than not that Thales' comment can be taken as the earliest evidence that we have for Jesus outside of the New Testament, and it's an early confirmation of something that happened during Jesus' crucifixion. For skeptics not to give this evidence some mention seems a little too convenient if you ask me.
One of the first historians of this period, Rufinus of Aquileia, as a part of the work he completed on Eusebius's ecclesiastical history, contains a section that describes a defense given to Maximus by Lucian of Antioch before his death by martyrdom in 312 AD. This Roman writer was quite certain that the darkness described by the Gospels that is said to have happened at the crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth was a part of the historical record of the Roman archives.
Search your writings and you shall find that in Pilate's time, when Christ suffered, the sun was suddenly withdrawn and darkness followed.
Roman historian Rufinus of Aquileia. Rufinus would never have asked the Romans to search their records for the account of the darkness if it didn't happen. This statement not only confirms the New Testament account that darkness occurred at Jesus' crucifixion, but also serves as proof that documents other than the Bible exist in the records of antiquity, which describe the crucifixion of a man called the Christ. During the reign of Tiberius Caesar, a 2nd century record from Phlegon of Tralles describes a complete solar eclipse that happened during the time of the full moon, exactly as the Gospels record, from the 6th to the 9th hour.
In the 4th year of the 202nd Olympiad, there was a great eclipse of the sun, greater than had ever been known before, for at the 6th hour the day was changed into night, and the stars were seen in the heavens. An earthquake occurred in Bithynia, and overthrew a great part of the city of Nicaea. Phlegon of Tralles, the extant fragments of the Olympiads of Phlegon.
Though often contested among scholars, Pontius Pilate is alleged to have sent the following report to Tiberius, Emperor of Rome.
And when he had been crucified, there was darkness over the whole earth, the sun having been completely hidden, and the heaven appearing dark, so that the stars appeared, but had at the same time their brightness darkened, as I suppose your reverence is not ignorant of, because in all the world they lighted lamps from the 6th hour until evening. And the moon, being like blood, did not shine the whole night, and yet she happened to be at the full. Pontius Pilate to Tiberius in a bid.
The moon, being like blood, would indicate a lunar eclipse was happening simultaneously as the sun was darkened, a claim that is attested to by other historians at the time such as Phlegon. But regardless if these words were written by the eyewitness of Pilate, the descriptions of the sun being hidden or obscured during the time of the full moon phase isn't unique to that document.
Jesus volunteered.
Okay, real quick. We're getting close to the halfway point in the video, and there's just been so much to take in so far. So I just figured we'd give the audience a little chance to try to absorb what they're listening to. And if you guys had any comments or questions, I know that right now we're seeing quotes that seem to make it say it was an eclipse, but then that recent quote said, oh, but by the way, the moon was visible, which is not ever visible during what they call an eclipse today. And the moon itself was going through an eclipse.
Exactly. So at first, when I was reading some of these quotes, I was under the impression that they were assuming a lunar calendar. When they were looking back on this part of history, they were like, oh, it was around the time of Passover. It must have been 15 days after the new moon, and so forth and so forth. But then the more I looked, the historical accounts say that there was a full moon, that people observed that. Some of them even say there was a lunar eclipse happening at the same time.
And
which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Never seen that in our lifetime, have we?
Right. But then so there's another quote that we're going to get to at the end, which I feel like is the treasure trove in itself, where a man named Dionysius goes into describing how it definitely wasn't the moon, but it was something that could be mistaken for the moon, is what you can gather from his quote. And I can't wait for y'all to see how it's broken down here.
Yeah, and for people watching that aren't familiar with an eclipse, a solar eclipse, does it ever happen with a full moon, or is it always with a new moon?
As far as, in modernity at least, and as far back as, a lot of the government sources or the scholars will attest to, it's always on the new moon.
Yeah.
With possibly some exceptions, and this may have been one of them.
Yeah, so that's cool that it says, like, there's like a full moon and there's this event happening. It wasn't the Selenelian, or however you say it, that eclipse where,
But in the
totally
cycle of the moon
hour.
itself, if it's a full moon, it's on the other side of the sky.
Yeah.
Correct.
They're
And that's
opposite ends.
correct. You'll see a quote where they said that exact same thing, I think, coming up here from this same person, I believe. We'll see.
So it's interesting. All right, we'll keep going.
is.
Any
Let's
other
do it.
questions before we go? Okay.
Voluntarily gave himself over to the passion, but through the impiety of the Jews, was apprehended and nailed to the cross. As a very great earthquake took place throughout the world, rocks upon mountains were split, and a great many parts of the largest cities fell by this extraordinary violence. On the same day also, at the 6th hour of the day, the sun was entirely obscured, and a loathsome night suddenly overshadowed the land, as it was said, an impious age feared eternal night. Moreover, it was quite clear that neither the moon nor the clouds stood in the way of the light of the sun. So it is reported that on that day the moon, being 14 days old, with the entire region of the heavens thrown in between, was farthest from the sight of the sun. The stars throughout the entire sky shone, then in the hours of the day, or rather on that terrible night. To this, not only the authority of the Holy Gospels attest, but even some books of the Greeks. Christian historian Paulus Orosius.
Dionysius the Areopagite remains one of the most enigmatic figures of the early Christianity. He was a Greek author, Christian theologian, and Neoplatonic philosopher of the late 5th to early 6th century. The Dionysian writings were given great authority among subsequent theological writings in both the East and the West. He describes his first-hand account of the sun's darkening during Christ's crucifixion as follows.
How, for instance, when we were staying in Heliopolis, on a certain 6th day, and about the 6th hour, the sun, to our great surprise, became obscured, through the moon passing over it, not because it is a god, but because a creature of God, when its very true light was setting, could not bear to shine. For when the whole orb had been throughout darkened by a black mist of darkness, and the sun's disk had begun again to be purged and to shine anew, then taking the table of Philip Aridaeus and contemplating the orbs of heaven, we learned, what was otherwise well known, that an eclipse of the sun could not, at that time, occur. Next, we observed that the moon approached the sun from the east and intercepted its rays until it covered the whole, whereas at other times it used to approach from the west. Further also, we noted that when it had reached the extreme edge of the sun and had covered the whole orb, that it then went back towards the east, although that was a time which called neither for the presence of the moon nor for the conjunction of the sun. I therefore, O treasury of manifold learning, since I was incapable of understanding so great a mystery, thus address thee. What thinkest thou of this thing, O Apollophanes, mirror of learning? Of what mysteries do these unaccustomed portents appear to you to be indications? Thou then, with inspired lips, rather than with speech of human voice, these are, O excellent Dionysius, thou saidst, changes of things divine. Dionysius, the Areopagite.
According to this report, an object that could be mistaken for the moon eclipsed the face of the sun on the day Christ was crucified. However, it was confirmed that it could not have been the moon. Let's examine some of the other observations Dionysius recorded.
Next, we observed that the moon approached the sun from the east and intercepted its rays until it covered the whole, whereas at other times it used to approach from the west.
In this excerpt, the author mentions that the solar eclipses they were accustomed to would present a shadow which would move from west to east, whereas the sun and moon always travel from east to west across the sky. Listen, as alleged scientists attempt to explain this phenomenon.
I heard that the shadow is moving from west to east. But how can that be possible, since the moon moves from east to west?
Hi, I'm Sarah Kaplan, and I'll be answering for science today. On August 21st,
Hi, I'm about to give you the most incredible bucket of BS you've ever heard in your life.
It's
and I'll be
sad.
answering for science today.
Yeah. It's pretty bad. Like they have to end up going to a NASA so-called, expert, and even his answer, as you'll see, is just
I need to see how big her guns are. See how she's carrying that big bucket. All right, let's everybody put on your critical
Brace
thinking
yourself.
caps, and let's listen to what she's about to
It's just over our heads.
say. Yeah, you just don't understand the Trinity, Josh.
Something really exciting is going to happen in the US, a total solar eclipse. This is what happens when the moon passes in front of the sun, and it's going to cast a shadow that travels across the United States, all the way from the Oregon coast to South Carolina. But wait, if the moon rises in the east and sets in the west, why is the shadow moving from west to east? This is actually a really big question, and even astrophysicists sometimes have trouble answering it. Let's see if any of my colleagues can help. So we're trying to figure out, why is it that the eclipse goes from west to east if the moon rises in the east and sets in the west?
If we're on the planet and we're looking up, shouldn't they be traveling the same direction?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, it has to do with rotation and revolution.
Yes.
And
Gang, gang. She's a part of the weather gang, guys. Did y'all see that? gang.
Do you know?
The Earth is spinning this way,
So
and the
it-
moon is spinning the same way that the Earth is orbiting, but
I
the Earth
see.
is spinning faster than the moon is orbiting.
See, this is why I stick to biology.
Okay.
Angela's the Earth.
So I'm spinning this way, right? But you're running really faster. Yeah, exactly.
Clearly, we need to consult an expert on this. So we went to NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland to talk to Alex Young, a NASA scientist, and ask for his best explanation.
To try to make it as simple as possible, it really boils down to how fast the Earth is spinning and how fast the moon is orbiting around it. The moon is orbiting about twice as fast as the Earth is spinning. So if we're looking down on the Earth and we're at the moon, we see the Earth spinning, but the moon is moving faster. And so that shadow is moving across the Earth this way, which is west to east.
Simple, right?
Further also, we noted that when
Wait, what?
Exactly. The speeds are so ludicrous. The distances are so incredibly far. You just got to trust us. That's basically their answer.
Yeah. And they didn't show an animation to represent what he was saying. They just
No,
had
they really
him use
didn't.
his hands, and then they're like, and look at this picture, and we're done.
Yeah. And then we're done. Exactly.
Was
There
his
wasn't
premise
really a
that the
solid
moon
answer.
moves faster, and so the shadow changes directions?
I think that's what
Exactly.
they're trying to say. I think
And,
that's the
like-
best argument they can
The
offer.
moon speed.
So because of the moon, but the moon doesn't speed up. They're just saying that since the moon is traveling fast, which is its normal speed,
Yeah.
then but because of that, insert anomaly where the shadow goes the opposite direction from time to time.
Yeah. I'm just shocked they didn't say refraction at some point. You know, like, it's refraction.
Man, this is exactly where that parody on SNL of them playing Jeopardy.
Yeah.
And Alex Trebek's like, we are dumber for that answer. Yeah, that made no sense at all.
I'm glad they tried though. You can see they were like, they're really trying to sound like they know what they're doing. The woman's like, let me put my hands together and something will come to me and I'll be able to sound smart. And it's like, it doesn't make sense.
Keep praying for the answers, lady.
I'm
I've
surprised
been in
they
those
should've
situations. It's tough.
Why didn't they just stick with refraction? You know?
Yeah, I would stick to that. I mean, that's been your go-to.
No one even
waves.
seems to question refraction. They're just like, oh yeah.
Oh,
It's a word I can say, but I can't explain. Yeah.
It's in the ionosphere, and then it turns the other way. It's a mirroring effect. It's genius.
Wow.
Something I didn't really get to address much in this video here is that, Dionysius said that normally, at other times, it used to approach from the west. So they're used to seeing the eclipse like they were just talking about in that video, where it moves from west to east. However, he said this time it came in from the east. And then what he's about to say, this next part I like a lot, because he says it goes back towards the east after it moved over the face of the sun.
And we've seen
Yeah.
that in modernity.
That's
so
right.
that's wild, guys. Here we go.
It had reached the extreme edge of the sun, and had covered the whole orb, that it then went back towards the east.
This fascinating claim by Dionysius is very similar to what can be seen in the following clip from Investigating Babylon by Kingdom in Context.
This is a partial solar eclipse that I shot with both my telescope and a telephoto lens. The reason I'm showing this is because you've got to consider that we are told the moon is roughly 400 times smaller than the sun, yet the sun is 400 times more distant, so we see this perfect kind of fit when they are aligned. And when you consider if it's even possible statistically, that kind of demonstrate that it is damn near impossible for random events to have caused this kind of alignment. We need to question these things.
I'm going to back this up a little bit. He's filming an eclipse with a different type of filter that way. That's why the sun looks so diminished in light. It seems like as soon as the eclipse starts coming in, it's like it changes trajectory and starts going back out, which I think is amazing. If he literally was filming it from his point of view on the land where he lives and filming this eclipse in the sky at just the right angle to catch it on its circumference revolution in this firmament, to where if it's the moon, I'm going to back it up, guys, and so you can watch this again. See the motion and the path of the moon. It's coming down at a diagonal, like 2 o'clock, and then it's going to stop and go back up towards 12 o'clock. Do you see that?
So these partial eclipses happen much more frequently than the full total eclipse. They only make a big media spectacle out of the total eclipses, but you can find tons and tons of amateur astronomer or even professional telephoto astronomy where they view partial eclipses, and that's from 2015. I also used that clip in that same episode, part 19. There's a partial eclipse that was filmed at 30,000+ feet from a passenger plane that they retrofitted, had a bunch of photographers get on. And they took all the seats out on one side that was going to be facing the eclipse, so they could set up their cameras inside the window portholes, whatever they're called, and then catch the partial solar eclipse as it went over the clouds. And that's that famous clip that you guys have seen where you see that shadow flow over the tops of the clouds during that eclipse. That's not a full that day. That was a partial. But even still, it's like this very little bitty shadow, right? That's like, 40 miles wide at most. And it's definitely not covering a quarter of the earth or nothing like that. So that's where, if you guys want to research eclipses, you can find a ton of partial eclipses out there. They happen all the time.
How about the annular eclipse?
And the annular, yeah, which they don't make a big deal about.
Right. Will you put my share screen up on real quick?
Yeah, for sure.
I got a meme here that's something that I don't know that we had talked about or that you had talked about, if I can't recall, but nonetheless, photos of the annular solar eclipse. And then we have a couple quotes of Enoch, right? And if depends on if you hold Enoch to be true or not, but we do. We hold it to be fact. And he repeatedly says that both the lesser light that God created, known as the moon, and the greater light that God created as the sun, which are placed in the firmament, are in fact the same size. However, these pictures of this annular eclipse definitely depict two objects that are not the same size. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Definitely not. Yeah, that is.
Yeah, that in most media that you see when they try to film a total solar eclipse, they make such a big deal about the diamond ring that pops out as it moves away. But even when it eclipses, it doesn't fully eclipse. And they'll say, well, it's just the light refracting off, coming around the edges of it.
Fraction.
But once you put solar filters on, that people that are, astronomers, amateurs and professionals, they put these solar filters on like you're seeing in these photos, and you can actually see the edge of the sun, of the body of the sun, without all the light interference from with the filters or filtering that off. And you can see the edge of the body of the moon, the edge of the body of the sun is a greater circumference than the thing that's going in front of it.
Right. But you can't block out the sun, S-O-N.
That's right.
He's the light of the world.
Nice.
Yeah.
And of course, I can only imagine, WesBlaze, that their answer would be, well, it's just your perspective from where you are on the angle of where you are on the earth, is that it looks to be smaller, right? But if you're at actually a perfect angle, but even in the full 100% path of totality, you'll see that you can still see the edges of it as it's eclipsing. and it's not fully the same size. So I do believe First Enoch, and then some of these quotes we're going to get to, I think, also supports First Enoch. To be honest, specifically when it talks about the moon was on the other side of the sky, and it was the 14th day of the moon's cycle, and I'm like, yeah, you only get that from Enoch.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting, very interesting stuff.
How about the new Zelda game? Floating Sky Castle, and look at their emblem right here. You got a floating eye
with the hand.
Yeah.
Remember the hand? Remember Tron?
Yeah.
Remember that break down the Hebrew word Tron? It's
Or how about the evil eye symbol that a lot of Kabbalists used to use? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the eyes inside the hand. Yeah, it's crazy.
Right.
Yeah, that's just all this stuff has been just pushed into our culture like crazy. We're just trying to help people to realize what you've been looking at this whole time, and why things that doesn't seem to, like, how do I say this? I remember there's like you talked about, we talk about the partial eclipses, the annual eclipses, and then they make a big deal about the total eclipses. And I remember as a kid, they were making a big deal about total eclipse, and neighbors' moms were passing around little, sunglasses to put on, and making cardboard boxes to where you could look at it through a hole in a box and stuff like that. And I just remember thinking, what? Why? I just remember being like so unexcited about, like, what are we doing? Just looking at and like, even in my child's mind, I believed in the heliocentric model at the time. And I thought, oh, so then the moon's just crossing the sun. So what? You know what I mean? Like, who cares? I'm trying to play G.I. Joes over here. Like, this doesn't mean anything. Like, why are you guys freaking out about this? I didn't understand it. And I remember in 2015, I believe, there was a lunar eclipse, I believe. And it came in from the complete wrong side. The shadow came in from the complete wrong side. It would not have been the Earth at all. And I asked this person I knew that was like an avid astronomer, right? And I was like, hey, why did it come in from the wrong side? He was like, bro, you shouldn't, sometimes you just shouldn't ask questions and just enjoy the beauty of the heavenly nature. You know what I mean? I was like,
Wow.
I was like, well, wait. I mean, this was a Christian, but he didn't care. He was just freaking out that I was even questioning, So it's becoming an emotional thing for a lot of people, is all I'm trying to get at. And we're not trying to say that that you got to believe anything. We're just trying to tell you, look, this has been questioned throughout all of history. And I think WesBlaze's video has been very impactful tonight, and we're going to finish watching it. But he shows that they've been having the same conversation throughout all of history. This has not been settled science.
Right.
That's the biggest takeaway I hope people can remember when we look at some of these quotes. This has not been settled science at all. This has always been something that they was a mystery. They didn't understand why this was happening.
Dang.
It's pretty wild.
In the Super Mario Bros. Movie, they depict a flat circle of an Earth, and the horned reptilian bad guy of the movie, Bowser.
Yeah.
Of course, in a flying sky castle that looks very evil.
Coincidentally, he's got lightning on top of it.
Right. I saw that too. How about Songs of Sabbath Sacrifice number 5? Just talking about the war of the godlike beings in thee, removing. Surely the weapons of warfare belong to the God of divine beings. The armies of heaven and the wonders of all the divine spirits shall run at his command, while the voice of tumult with his might, armies of divine spirits at war in the clouds, but the victory shall belong to the God of gods, the God of divine beings. Elohim of Elohim.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
Really wish we could have those full fragments of those songs. Those are pretty amazing.
Me too.
Pretty amazing.
Enjoyed it. Absolutely.
Was there any more images you want to review?
Nah.
Okay.
Let's do it. Let's see the rest.
It changed. Came down and stopped and it went up. It's not the moon, guys. It's not the moon, guys. It's not the moon, guys.
That's no moon. That's no moon. Moon. That's no moon. That's no moon. It's a base station.
totality, let's take a live look at Isabel and Taylor's shot right now. They have the most incredible view.
What did we just witness? I mean, that's why I put my sunglasses back on in preparation of the sun coming back out, but this was unreal. Something I never imagined. We saw, I don't know what kind of star, or if it was a planet, but we saw, in addition to the moon over the sun, we saw a planet or a star. It looked so...
I'm going to cut away from WFFF. I love that we're hearing the reactions, but apparently I do have one more shot of totality to bring you. This going back to our NASA telescope partner feeds, and there we just entered it wherever this particular telescope is located. I just saw them take their filter off, and so here we are witnessing, this is the final shot that I had for you on this live stream of the Great American Eclipse, this April 8th, 2024, totality across the U.S.
So you're muted, Sean.
Wes, I want to let you catch the audience up on what they just saw.
Okay, so that was a clip from a news station that was doing a live stream during the 2024 April 8th eclipse just recently here, and those newscasters there were starting to talk about something they witnessed, and then they were quickly cut off. To be fair, it was said that there was a planetary alignment, that certain wandering stars were kind of in the vicinity during this eclipse. I didn't happen to see those. I don't know if you guys did, but I read that that was to happen, that it was going to happen. However, it's awfully fishy that if that's all that it was, why would they have another newscaster with somebody telling him in his earpiece, hurry, cut to the shot? You know what I mean? Here's an approved NASA shot. We need to show that and cut her off of whatever she was saying. I think that's interesting, because that would, whatever she was saying sounded really exciting. Like it could make for good ratings or good viewership, but they cut her off.
Yeah, right at the peak of what she was saying, and NASA's really good at doing that, where they'll go to the mission control room anytime something's kind of sketchy or their virtual augmented reality starting to mess up. They're like, mission control room, let's look at people behind computers. Surprised they didn't pull that number, but yeah.
It's as if the handlers were ready just in case they see anything they want to comment on. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's
wild. Producers.
Yeah. And I think we're going to see a quote up here, or we already heard a quote, right? About when during the crucifix, the 3 hours of darkness, they could see stars out.
Yeah, correct.
And so, and maybe I misheard, but she was like, and we also saw a star or a planet or something as it was happening. So it's just interesting to see that, people, they'll tell you that you can't look up at it, the eclipse, because it's going to destroy your eyes or somehow.
Yeah.
I just thought of something too. If she's looking up where the sun is at and she saw a planet in the sky, usually, I mean, it seems like the sun would be on the other side of them, unless, I mean, would it not? I'm trying to think which planet would have been there, because if it's one that's in between us and the sun, we wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah, that would be the question to try to dig into, is
how is it shining its light at us? If
within the heliocentric model, how is it even visible? Or it would be backlit also, right?
Yeah, the backside of it would be glowing, but you wouldn't be able to tell. It's a ball of gas,
right?
Like, I don't understand, because I saw somebody shared a photo of the moon, the very thin sliver of the moon with the very thin sliver. It was Venus, but Venus was like 10 times brighter than the moon, and I'm like, so the inverse square law just doesn't apply here,
right?
How?
Don't you know the sunlight make gases, 1,000 times brighter?
Yeah,
in space.
Gas powered, maybe. I don't know.
And considering too that Scripture, Apocalypse of Abraham says that the stars are in the 5th heaven, and then we've concluded that the sun would and the moon both would be either in the 2nd or 3rd heaven, below the stars and the wandering stars. So it's fun to think about.
Yeah, it's interesting. So if the light of the sun was diminished on the earth, the light of the stars would still be shining through, because they're coming from behind the sun.
Yep.
Or above the sun in the biblical model. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And there we just entered it wherever this particular telescope is located. I just saw them take.
You say he didn't even know where it's from.
So here we are witnessing. This is.
What's that?
He didn't even. He said wherever this particular telescope is located. He doesn't even know. So it was a very.
They were just giving him a feed.
Yeah.
Right.
Dang.
That's funny.
The final shot that I had for you on this live stream of the Great American Eclipse, this April 8th, 2024, totality across the U.S.
The Gospels insist that the sun was obscured for 3 hours when the Messiah hung on the cross. Was this the result of a solar eclipse, which proved that the moon is not the cause? Let me know your thoughts and findings in the comments. Then be sure to check out these related presentations.
Gons here for the Face Like the Sun YouTube channel. In this video, I wanted to share something with you that's really quite remarkable. While this might be old news to some of you, it may help others of you understand and solidify in your minds why Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. And in context to the Face Like the Sun channel and many others who oppose and expose the New World Order, this dark elite globalist faction, this insight may be the nail in the coffin to turn you away from what the world sells you. In other words, repent and accept Jesus Christ into your hearts as your personal Lord and Savior. Now, to start off here, the name Yeshua consists of 4 Hebrew letters from right to left. You have the Yud, the Shin, the Vav, or the Wow, and the Ayin. You might have heard in churches that the name Jesus means he saves or salvation, and that's pretty accurate, but the Hebrew language also has some deeper meanings that are quite awesome when you begin to uncover them. Hebrew letters contain within it pictographs. A pictograph is basically a pictorial symbol for a word or phrase, and they were actually used as the earliest known form of writing, and examples have been discovered in Egypt and Mesopotamia from before 3000 BC. So basically each letter represents more than just that letter. So let's break down the 4 Hebrew letters for Yeshua. First, the Yud. According to a couple different sources, the Yud in pictograph form represents an arm, hand, work, or deed. The meaning of the letter is work, throw, or worship, but Blue Letter Bible suggests that the Yud not only represents the hand, but also strength and power. But mainly it represents a hand or an arm, and that's what the original form of Yud looks like. It looks kind of like an arm. Next we have Shin, which in pictograph form means to eat or consume or destroy. The form of the letter looks like 2 front teeth, but most pictographs suggest that this means to consume or destroy. Then we move on to the Vav, or the Wow, depending on the form. The pictograph here means nail or tent peg, or to connect 2 things. The suggestion that it is building something. In fact, some translations of the pictograph suggests that it means an establishment, or something that's built or constructed. And then finally, Ayin, which simply means eye, to see or to experience. So based on these 4 Hebrew letters, when we put it together, one can conclude, it doesn't have to be this, but you can conclude that Jesus' name in the Hebrew, Yeshua, means the hand that destroys the establishment of the eye. In other words, this whole New World Order thing that's being built all around us, while we can resist it for a time and we can expose what we can, guess who will ultimately destroy it? That's right. It's Yeshua, Jesus Christ.
Well done, brother. Well done.
Thank you, Colin. Glory to God Most High. That Star Killer base sure does look like some of those pictures, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's
The
what I
red
was trying
flare.
to. Yeah, I was trying to say that all the modern media depictions of this sphere, it looks like the power sign on all your electrical devices. A circle with a line through the middle to another little interior circle.
Yeah.
And that's even on that weather cam in Southern Colorado that I showed in part 21 of my series. That seemed to be the everyone's, not everyone. A few select people were like, "Oh, it's a lens flare," and I'm like, "Okay, well, the hot spot that's on this lens flare, it's right next to what looks like this interior circle inside of this big sphere, and that is the modern representation on all this forms of media. Is that sphere? It's like a Pokemon." It's a sphere with a line in the middle and another little interior eye. It's it literally looks like the eye behind WesBlaze's head, if it was actually spherical and not crushed. But
Yeah, this right here takes on a whole new meaning now that you know what the Eye of Ra is, don't you?
That's right.
Doesn't it?
And specifically the establishment thereof, right? So it's not just the eye, but everything connected to it.
Amen.
This is why I think Revelation 18 is so powerful to talk about. All of the traders of the earth and the seas will no longer enjoy the luxuries that come from Mother Babylon when she's thrown down. This is there's massive upheaval when Revelation 8:8 takes, or 8:2 takes place, when this burning mountain in the sky is thrown down to the earth. And I think that it's right that the Father would refer to this thing as a destroying mountain.
Yeah.
So because it destroys, deceives people in a variety of ways, as Revelation 17 and 18 talks about. So yeah, man, this is fascinating to see in history. So many of these people that are observing the crucifix of Christ and going, wait a minute, it's still dark. Like, this isn't whatever they thought an eclipse was back then. This definitely isn't one. By the way, the tables of Philip Aridia.
Yeah. He was an
apparently,
Egyptian.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead.
Like Egyptian ruler, and he had these commissioned, even though this is when Rome actually ruled Egypt at the time. He had already had these tables commissioned, which was trying to track solar eclipses.
Yeah.
So isn't that wild? And that's and they find predictable patterns, and that's why NASA has one guy who actually uses the ephemeris chart to talk about when the solar eclipses are going to happen. They've had this chart since Babylon. They've had this for a long time.
Exactly. Like I was just about to say, we talked about it in Mothership Babylon, episode 48 of Uncommon Ground, how there was a quote from Gerard Hickson, Kings Dethroned, where he talked about that the Babylonians had tracked the solar eclipses by a cycle of, just a numeric pattern of, what was it, 223 lunar months, I believe, and they called that a Sauron cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Or Soros, something like that.
Soros cycle. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's close enough to Lord of the Rings. May as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
May as well be Sauron.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah.
The eye on the tower.
Wow. It's amazing. It's amazing that why aren't we taught this in school, Josh, Mr. School Teacher?
Yeah, because I'm not allowed. They told me, don't be biased. That was the words I was told when the last time I got called into the principal's office, is you can't be biased. I'm like, you mean I can't be biased in one direction,
Right.
and they're good people, they're believers, but it's like, they know you're an intelligent design believer. And they found the book that I co-authored. I wrote one chapter in it, and somehow that's how I got in trouble, because of the book. It wasn't even YouTube this time.
Wow.
But it's amazing. The children, when I came in the day after the eclipse, I didn't go to school that day, and so I came in the next day, and whoever was taking over at my class had NASA pulled up on the TV, because when I turn it on, it shows me what they were watching, and it was like the NASA website version of the eclipse. And one of my students goes, you guys know, like, the earth is flat, right? And I was like, it just totally surprised me. The person who said it, I was like, what? And then all the people they always gang up on the one person that believes that. So they're all ganging up on her, expecting me to jump in and help her out, or help them out to, like, debunk her. And they're so shocked when I'm like, no, the Bible's true. She's right. Look into it. And they're just like, wait, what? You're supposed to be a science teacher. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a science teacher. Prove all things. That's what we're supposed to do. And I was like, if you do that, you'll find out. She's right. And she's like, yeah, see, the Bible's true. My mom's right. My mom talks about this all the time. And I was like, this is awesome. It's like that people don't realize their children are listening, and they respect your opinion. And so it's cool to see that it's happening even in my small little country school. And so, yeah, it's fascinating. But there was just this year, it just had a different vibe to it, the eclipse. And I'm thinking, reflecting heavily on the crucifixion and when it happened, that 6th hour to the 9th hour. And when I was looking at when this eclipse happened, it was like from the 6th hour to the 9th hour from where I was at. And man, it chokes you up. And when in your video, when it's like, and he breathed his last breath, and it goes dark, man, that just, it's powerful. It chokes you up, but it reminds me of where we are in time, the prophecies in Hosea, all the things that have been foreshadowed, creation in day one, there was darkness and then there was light. And Yeshua was here on the first millennial day, this new first millennial day. And I believe he's returning on the 3rd millennial day. And so there being that darkness and then there being light at that point in time is it's heartbreaking with what happened, him breathing his last breath, but man, it's powerful. What the turn of events, the surprising hidden mystery, the mystery that was hidden from the powers of darkness, man, it's awesome to see the outcome after that, but so sad to think about what he endured and what the Father endured in those moments, man.
Yeah,
Correct me
it's
if I'm
definitely
wrong. Isn't it? Didn't he breathe his last breath at the 9th hour?
Or was it the 9th hour?
Sean,
I
wouldn't it?
could be wrong.
yeah. It's I mean it was
So
which would
it
have
was
been
while he was
technically 3 p.m. in
Yeah,
the afternoon.
yeah.
yeah 12 to 3. So it was while he was on the cross for the 3 hours that it was dark, and then when he breathed
Right.
his last breath, the light shined again.
That would
Basically,
be
right down on him again.
terrifying. Yeah, as a spectator going, what is he gonna do now? Like, I
Yeah,
would be so like, the sun just went dark and we messed up, you know?
Well, it makes a lot more sense now to this Roman soldier's words where he steps back and goes, "Truly, this was the Son of God."
Yeah,
Watching the crucifixion and putting into context all these other quotes about the surrounding environment, the sun going dark, them seeing the moon across the sky also eclipsing,
yeah,
they would have been like, "We've never seen this before." Like, truly,
Hmm.
this was the Son of God. And the earthquakes happening across the across the world and stuff like that.
Mhm.
To my knowledge, we're not going to see anything like that until the second coming,
Yeah,
where earthquakes happen simultaneously and destroy cities across the world. So to me, this was like a massive testimony from the creation itself. But I'm not suggesting that the moon eclipsed the sun. Um, Obviously, as we see conflicting testimony from history, some people said both the sun and the moon, both in the sky visible, were being eclipsed. Whereas one of those quotes said, "Well, we had a strange eclipse that day during the crucifixion." But you're like, "Did you see it?" Because other people are saying they were there and they saw it, and both the sun and the moon in the sky were visible and being eclipsed at the same time.
mhm.
correct. Yeah. In
So
Dionysius, it was really interesting how he worded that. Like he started off talking about the moon eclipsing the sun, and then he says we confirmed with the tables of Philip such that could not have been the moon because of how far away it was at the full moon phase and this and that. But then he goes on to describe using the words a moon having eclipsed the sun. It's because
right.
it's as if he didn't know anything else to call it, right? He was
Yeah.
like, it's another moon, I guess.
Right. So the thing that it brings to mind to me is that to understand the occult, the level of hierarchy in the occult, right? So the priesthood of Ra would have known what the Eye of Ra is, but the people may not have.
Right.
Mhm.
So you're saying, so like
Mhm.
it's interesting, especially when you get towards the areas of the Romans have now taken over the Egyptians, and who knows how much was transferred as far as common knowledge to the average person of what these things were, or
And
they
it's just
were
like the occult. So sorry. It's just like the occult to occult certain knowledge and
exactly,
keep it compartmentalized so that not everybody
exactly.
knows everything.
And that's where I had I know this is kind of a deep reference to some of my videos, guys, but just bear with me. But in my uh, a contextual reading of Galatians Part 4 episode I did, where I showed a modern day a Jewish rabbi, modern day Jewish rabbi, talking about Kabbalah, and he was talking about that it's always been handed down through oral teachings, and there's a long-standing history of it going way to the 2nd century BC. So that you have this Kabbalistic teachings and their levels of interpretation that were taught through degrees of understanding higher levels of knowledge and wisdom as you get deeper into the Sephirot, into their system of Kabbalah that was inherently mixed into the interpretations in Judaism. And this is a modern day rabbi giving the history of Kabbalah and its interpretive hermeneutic lens as a foundation within Judaism all the way back before 200 years before Christ. So that starts to make all this crazy sense as to why they had all these wild traditions of men superseding the commandments of God by the time Christ shows up. And you had Christ making statements like, "Oh, well, you guys can look at the excuse me." Christ is talking to the Pharisees and reprimanding, saying, "You guys can look at the heavens and determine the rain and the wind and the weather, but you can't see, the signs right in front of you." I'm paraphrasing,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? He's chastising them because they had already been practicing these types of knowledge that is taught by degrees. And inside of the occult, it's always you have to work your way up to higher levels of knowledge that you're entrusted with. So people that we're pulling these quotes from, they may not have had that. They may have been a part of the secret societies or to initiate into something or known the higher levels of knowledge. To them, it's just being portrayed as, oh, here's an eclipse. But to know what an eclipse is, it's very interesting, because you have all these events recorded in history that go against the general working definition of an eclipse, that we don't see the moon eclipsing the sun. And we have all these other testimonies of the moon actually being in the sky at the same time on the opposite side of the sky. So it's not like it could just hurry up and, or just kind of cross path like a partial eclipse. No, it's on the other side of the sky, according to these testimonies.
Exactly. There was one more quote that I didn't include in there, that was from Phlegon, and I'm not positive if it's the same Phlegon that I also quoted. Could have been two different dudes named Phlegon. Nonetheless, a substantial record from a Greek historian described the 3 hours of darkness over Jerusalem during the time of Tiberius Caesar, which is when Yeshua was crucified. And he goes on to talk about, just real quick, it says, this eclipse was visible from Jerusalem at moonrise, first visible from Jerusalem at about 6:20 p.m., the start of the Jewish Sabbath, and also the start of Passover in AD 33, with about 20% of its disk in the umbra of the Earth's shadow, and the eclipse finished some 30 minutes later at 6:50 p.m. This quote would be about the lunar eclipse, because it's only 30 minutes long, they said, and that, so he says he sees it in the evening by the time that the moon came around to them in Jerusalem.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean? So that's another quote confirming that there was a lunar eclipse at the same time that day.
Okay, so if it wasn't the sun eclipsing, so it wasn't the moon eclipsing the sun during the crucifixion, and the theory that I've put forward that some people have tried to, test, is that the idea it's literally the home of Satan. It's a massive spheroidus vimana that is basically using higher levels of technology in order to keep itself suspended in the air as a livable, inhabited environment. Referenced by many ancient cultures as the Eye of Ra, the Lotus of Brahma, and even Mount Olympus of Zeus. So if that's the case, why did it stay there for 3 hours?
Yeah, so this gets into something I wanted to talk about, is like, this can be looked at in one way is like, okay, was this a sign from God to accompany a portent, a world portent, as they would call it, right? Basically just an omen or a sign of things. And then, because Satan doesn't eclipse the moon at the same time, as far as we know. So there were signs that God orchestrated. Is it beyond God's power and beyond his character to use the enemy and what the enemy does to his glory? We would suggest no, it's not.
No.
If you look at Jubilees 49, I believe, about the Passover event in the Exodus, it seems that the powers of Mastema were used during that event. You see in Samuel and a couple other places that God would use the enemy. And even like when he would use, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, he would use the enemy or people that were against him for his glory to, however he would use it. What would you have to say about that, Sean?
If there was a cycle being recorded of these eclipses that are happening by men on the ground, then it's not too hard for the Father to know to when the next one's going to happen and orchestrate these things. Now, it's very interesting to me, though, because if they had a cycle of, I would say this, if they had if the enemy's trying to mask itself as a superior religion to be worshipped, and that's its dominant sign, is, hey, I'm going to block out the sun, and that I'm the ruler of heaven, then what better way to do it on Passover? What better day to organize that, to communicate to all the people in your cult that follow you, all your adherents, that you're still in control, even on this most sacred day of Yahweh. You see what I mean? And so I think that's fascinating to me that he would say, oh, you're going to, by the way, and you remember what on the dollar bill, what it says, is it annuitas coeptus, he who oversees our endeavors and approves?
Or favors our undertakings.
Favors our undertakings, right? And it's from the All-Seeing Eye that looks down. To me, that just keeps popping in my head, thinking that if this is truly Mother Babylon eclipsing the sun during the crucifixion, that would be like him and staying there, not just the typical 8 minutes, right?
Right.
But staying around for 3 hours until Christ dies. Then you're just like making it super obvious that, because, okay, so let's put it like this. Say it's not Mother Babylon. Say it is the Father orchestrating supernatural events to block both the sun and moon's light without clouds. By the, he could have just done it with clouds, and an earthquake still could have happened, right? But without the clouds, so that everyone can see the orbs of luminaries being blocked. And say the Father orchestrated this. Why would he do it just for the 3 hours that Christ was put on the cross? Christ was dying the moment he was being beat with the cat o' nine tails.
Mm-hmm.
Like he started his bleeding out process right then. Christ was dying when he was walking to Golgotha and had to have Simon help carry the cross for him. He couldn't even make it. Christ was dying the whole way, like on the cross, breathing his last breath. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's a peculiar thing. Why not, if you're trying to make a statement from the Father that, oh, hey, by the way, you're messing with my son, the eclipse should have happened the moment they struck him, when they put the bag over his face and struck him, before they put the crown of thorns on him. I'm just giving you some, just a different perspective of why wait till he's on the cross, and specifically for that 3 hours to eclipse, or why not wait till the last 10, 15 minutes when he's actually giving up his last breath and releasing the spirit, and then the sun would be obscured. To me, it makes much, much more sense with the record of history, with everything we've put forward on Investigating Babylon in series, that what obscured the sun in that day was what they've been tracking to obscure the sun this whole time, which was their god that they worshipped. Yeah. And so therefore, it's on this day though, it obscures the sun like way, way, way longer than it normally does. Specifically from the time period and then leaving, obscuring the sun once Christ actually breathes his last breath. That's wild.
Yeah, and it's kind of like with Egypt, like you said, the sun god aspect. All the plagues were.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Josh. I got
sorry.
Praise. Don't come in here making crude jokes, bro. You're gone.
No.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, it just, to me, like that's. I'm sorry, Josh. Go ahead, bud. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just saying, I had a thought when you guys were showing these things and talking about it. Why? Because that was my thing. How would the evil one be able to do this at this crucial moment? And I thought, what if, it's like Egypt, where those plagues were an attack on all their gods, all their deities, that this was like a punishment, like the enemy's thinking he's got his day in the sun and everything's going great. And you've got this light source, the greater light to rule the day. And it's like, here's that, it's like here, right there, scorched by the sun while this is going on, like almost like a punishment to all those thinking they're rolling over, looking down, they're victorious. And then all of a sudden, what's happening? Here we are right directly at the sun being burned and scorched. Like, could have been like a punishment thing too, but also to show like, this is my beloved son right here. Your sun god is nothing. He can't even shine at this moment, like an attack against their god, the one that they continued worshiping, even, when the creeds were being written and all of that. Like, I just thought it'd be interesting if it was like a punishment aspect or something along those lines. That would be.
And what you're saying, there's a comment in the live chat that goes with what you're saying. If Yah stopped the sun for this moment. So essentially, if it's from God, would we conclude that God slowed down the luminaries to make this last 3 hours instead of 8 minutes?
Possible.
No, I'm saying, wouldn't that what we be? Wouldn't we have to conclude that? So like because for one, the testimony from ancient quotes are saying that it wasn't the moon. So then the moon, we don't have a testimony saying the moon was obscured for 3 hours too, just the sun, right? And they could still see the stars. So luminaries were shining. But does this mean if it was from God, then he had to slow down the sun from its orbit and the circumference of the heaven above and cause it to be obscured? Or as it moved through the sky, was it continually obscured?
That's what I picture, but I don't have anything really to base that on.
Because
I would
three
imagine.
hours, 3 hours is a quarter of the daylight.
Yeah, because
Right.
they use the sun to measure their time. How did they know? Oh, it's the 9th hour now, unless
Right.
something was moving to give them a reference, or like when it reappeared, their sundials shifted,
Yeah.
Right.
And if it was 12 to 3, you got to imagine at 12 o'clock noon, high noon, the sun is the highest, right, directly over the
Right.
location. And then from until 3, it's still, only a, however far across the sky that it moved, it's not a whole lot. And so I would imagine, on one hand, you have to think, okay, was Satan looking for a front row seat? And at the same time, a front row seat to the crucifixion, to gloat and to also display his dominance and power. Or was the Father knowing that he was going to do that, and then he intervened and like brought the winds or angels or whatever necessary to keep it there, or however the case. Here's one thing I did notice when I was reading what different scholars and so forth were saying about this event, and they believed that it was prophesied that this would happen in Amos 8, chapter 8, verse 9. It will come about in that day, declares the Lord, that I will make. Now, a lot of translations say the sun go down, or the
Right.
sun set, right, at noon, it even says. And
Right.
then, and make the earth, and it says, and make the earth dark in broad daylight. Then I will turn your festivals into mourning and all your songs into lamentation. I will bring sackcloth on everyone's loins and baldness on every head. And I will make it like a time of mourning for an only son. And so because of this wording, a lot of people say, see right there, that was a prophecy of Christ's crucifixion. I'm not positive, but it is interesting that it's Yahweh saying, I will do this. However, I don't believe that rules out the idea that Satan's home was present to cause that.
Oh, yeah, and if Amos 8 is actually specifically talking about the crucifixion itself, yeah, I know that there's a lot of people out there that talk about prophecies have like a double meaning,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's
dual fulfillment.
Yeah, type of thing. So it's interesting because when a few weeks ago or a couple weeks ago, I can't remember how long it's been now, brother, but when you first started talking to me about some of these concepts from these quotes that you were finding, then I was like, oh, okay. And that verse came to mind in Amos 8. And I was like, maybe, yes, could be. And then I was like, but I was like, yeah, it's interesting because again, a lot of variables go into play, right? What actually blocks the moon? We still don't know what causes lunar eclipses.
No.
Even modern day science doesn't even have conjecture. Like I apologize. Modern day science, state approved modern day science tells you it's the Earth blocking the light of the sun, and that's what causes a lunar eclipse. But that has been completely debunked by Selenelians and the angles of the shadows and the eclipse. And so even in modern science, they do not have a credible story for what causes lunar eclipses.
And since when does a shadow, like the alleged Earth shadow over the moon, glow red like we see during a lunar eclipse?
Right.
And they can predict the colors. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be red this time. It's gonna be blue the next time, guys. Be ready.
Yeah, because I mean I remember watching videos of people trying to provide what's it called, basically shilling for the moon landings, and they were talking about how the light on the moon would have been, some of the light on the moon wasn't just from the sun, but it was from the actual light of the sun bouncing off the oceans of the earth and lighting up the moon as well.
Earth shine, yeah.
What they call earth shine. And it's never red. It's like,
right.
Because they'll say it's bouncing off the oceans. But if we have a 70% water ball that we live on, why is it suddenly a red reflected? And they'll say, well, it's, it's red shift. It's the angle of light that comes off of it. That's what causes that to go. And I'm like, really? They say redshift happens with distant stars that are like, 4 million light years away, but 238,000 miles, and suddenly we have enough space for redshift. None of it makes any sense. It's not consistent within their own model. And so anyway, we don't know what causes lunar eclipses. They have a theory for what causes solar eclipses, but that's not even verifiable because no one actually sees the moon cross the path of the sun. So,
and if the new moon can be backlit to where it appears black, the moon is always being backlit, allegedly, and therefore should appear as a dark orb approaching and leaving the scene of the solar eclipse, as we illustrated in, Uncommon Ground 48. But
Yeah.
We don't see it like that.
And I'm always disappointed by the space footage. I mean, we allegedly have satellites tens of thousands of miles away, 1,000 miles away, a few hundred miles away, the ISS, and it's always, look, here's the shadow, and it looks like it's hanging from a balloon, like the camera's just kind of panning around. It's never high quality, multi-trillion dollar, footage. I mean, they spend so much of our money goes there, and it's always, it's. I'm not shocked anymore, but it's like, man, how does anyone not just go, like the global believers that worship this stuff, not be like, why aren't those satellites on the other side of the moon, that are these geostationary satellites and all these different things? Why are they not showing us this from all these different angles? We get the same stuff every time and time again. And they made a big deal about this last one, and it was a big letdown with all the stuff they didn't put out that they should. Like you said, Wes, they should have had the camera panned around, all hands on deck with the ISS. They're up there, but I forget they're up there doing science all day, so we need to go a little easy on them. But it's crazy. They're not just like we were.
They're adjusting their
the
wires
window.
and harnesses. Yeah,
so they can grow lettuce for a fifth time.
Yeah, yeah, growing
Gorilla
lettuce,
suits.
ignoring geotropism or gravitropism, whatever you want to call it, where plants need gravity is what they tell us to grow upwards and the roots to grow downwards. They have to detect gravity and work, but we're growing them in space, guys, and because somehow they just defy all these things we already made up about gravity.
They just put the grow pod in between two magnets. That must be what it is.
Oh, is that what they say?
No, I'm just making that up.
I was about to say, I was like, I've
See,
never heard of an excuse.
I could write for space.com right there.
Yeah,
That's all they do.
Because I was like, wait a minute.
They just shoot from the hip. That's all they do. They're like, oh, look, it's a new planet that looks like a skeleton. And by the way, tomorrow's Halloween, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for subscribing to space.com. So yeah, this is a fascinating topic in general because one of the most significant moments in all of history, Christ's death on the cross. I personally would say the most significant moment in history is his resurrection from the tomb, because that fulfills the promise of the covenant. That is like Paul says in Acts 15. If we wouldn't raise from the dead, our faith is in vain. That is the most central moment that's going to give eternal life to humanity. And so, but the cross is extremely significant for the sacrifice of him going to it, laying down his will and his life to do that. And here at this moment, possibly the all-seeing eye of Ra decides to look on an extra long amount of time and make himself known, which is the thing of it's like, oh, look who's, because that's the point of the eclipse in the occults. It's a reminder of who's the God in the sky that rules the heavens. And you're gonna make an elongated display of your sign for that, specifically in the moments that Christ dies. And to me, it's just a level of braggadocious showboating that would have been just, I love it that supposedly it's a circular stone that guarded the tomb of Christ, because that diamond ring came out ablaze, right? With the glory of glorification. That diamond ring popped open and broke away the out of the darkness and brought the light from that stone being rolled out from under it, or out from over it. And so I just think that that's the most significant eclipse that passed by, is the stone being rolled away from the tomb of Christ.
Amen.
Personally.
Yeah, and he's
that
coming
reminds
back the way he
me.
left.
That reminds me of this right here. If I can present again. And open it again. You remember what I said? I was like, morning thoughts, the day of the eclipse, bro.
I remember. Yeah, we can show it though.
Share screen, window, this one. Symbol of the sinless one. A lot of people had questions about this when I shared it, and I was like, yeah, so that's the stone rolling away from the tomb.
Yeah.
The darkness moving away from the light and the light being revealed. However, a symbol of the wicked one would be this symbol of Ra, which happens to also be the symbol of the solar eclipse.
Yep. And Ra does mean evil in Hebrew.
It does. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
But you can't block out the sun. How about let's look again at these images of the photographs that somebody took. I wish I would have taken note of who took them. I gotta save them.
I just had a memory of one of the astronauts had a Eye of Ra tattoo on his chest, I think. I thought that was very telling.
It is a very popular tattoo, but how fascinating that
Telling.
NASA, yeah, telling that a NASA individual would have that. Oh, come on. There we go.
We remember that controversy back in 2018, I believe, where that article came out that the NASA employees were being told that they couldn't use the word Jesus in the buildings.
Or in their, yeah, and they said that in their newsletter.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
that was right
they
before
did.
our movement came alive. It was like, that was all that was keeping people from investigating.
Yeah.
So this doesn't look like the moon that I see in the sky.
No, it doesn't. How about that?
There's
What are all these divots?
The edges are like, what are these, uneven edges? It's
Yeah.
not the perfect circular body of the moon.
And most people would be conditioned to say, well, those are just the craters.
Yeah.
But this image right here, especially this part, that's what I said, really reminds me of, well, you said the power button, and it really looks like that Star Killer base.
Yeah.
From Star Wars, the bigger Death Star that they had.
Now remember,
yeah.
we're looking up, so we're seeing potentially the bottom of it.
Right.
Not able to see potentially what could be the top side of it.
How about
because of
divots
its
right here?
height, we're looking up, so we could just be seeing. Imagine looking at the bottom of the bowl over your head, right?
Yeah.
And the edges of the top of the bowl are damaged in some way or have a specific design shape for some reason. So we're just looking at the bottom of it. And to me, if the ancient quote from, what is his name?
Dionysius?
No, one of the guys that I covered in my Investigating Babylon series, I can't remember his name right now. Virgil, maybe Virgil, one of the Roman poet from the
yeah, where he wrote about, I have it right here.
Yeah, the double gated dome.
Here it is. Virgil, Publius Virgilius.
Yeah, so if this thing is actually enclosed with some sort of, if it's a landmass enclosed for the sake of air pressure and some sort of thing, some sort of container that has some sort of double gating across it, to me, it would be a, dome would be made of some sort of high level crystalline firmament that would put off this crazy shine once it, you know what I'm saying? So there's so many aspects to this once you really dig into the nitty gritty that it just makes it much more plausible that we know it's not the moon. So whatever it is, which has been observed, these quote unquote dark bodies have been observed by 19th century astronomers, and it's documented. And this is in that Robotham book. It's documented in that book. So I don't have the quote right now or the page number, but so I just think it's interesting that whatever construction material this is, it's almost as if from the grainy photos that we've seen from people that have captured something in the sky and then they've tried to analyze them, it's almost as if it's some sort of crystalline substance that would have a sense of texture to it because that would allow it to be that type of transparent medium, that chameleon transparent medium. Do you guys remember when I showed and I think it was part 20 of my Investigating Babylon series of the invisible glass that they created?
Yeah, for the cloaking or
Yeah, and it's like an opaque type of glass. So it's not just like a solid glass. It's like an opaque with it's got texture to it. So if you blew that up on a big scale, that texture would look like little divots in it.
True.
If you're using this on a massive scale. So I'm just saying there's so much to it. Yeah, like what's putting off those reflections?
Exactly. The moon, doesn't, as far as we know, the moon is a dusty rock ball, is it not? Why would it have like a prismatic effect like this?
Right. Why does it look like you're looking up through a kaleidoscope? Because at a kaleidoscope, the sun hits the curved glass at the top of it to put off these images inside the canister. So This doesn't make sense for the moon to be supposedly a rock in space and putting off these type of images.
Agreed.
Yeah. Has anyone done that with the shadows? How during the eclipses you can cross your fingers or look through tree branches and they have the shadows. I've never seen that happen except
I
during
haven't personally witnessed it firsthand either, but I know
it
what
should
you're
be done
talking
on a
about, where
lab.
it gets where you get all these crescents.
Yeah.
And this is in the sky and it's light, but they'll show the shadows through the trees or whatever the case, and for whatever reason it puts crescent moon shapes all over the ground in the shadows, which is the symbol of Diana, Artemis.
Yeah.
The moon that goes on and on. And
Astarte.
they
Yeah.
what I find fascinating is that they called her a goddess of the moon when she was a personified representation of Mother Babylon. It's like the deception started there, like interesting enough.
Yeah. And when I was filming the eclipse this time around, I find it interesting that I'm zoomed in on the sunspots and everything, and both the sun and the moon are in perfect focus. I don't have to adjust it like, okay, now the sun's in focus, now the moon's in focus. One's millions of miles away, and then the other one's just thousands of miles away. Like there should be a focus differential, and there's not. It's identical. And I thought that was eye-opening. And looking with the P900 zoomed in on the moon, you don't see any divots, any of the typical land markings that you see when you look at the moon. They weren't there. They were absent.
Right.
Josh, you were saying during the actual moment of the eclipse or afterwards, or
during the eclipse. Yeah, I was filming I had my P900 zooming in, and I just never thought of it before, that how come both of these are in perfect focus at the exact same time? It's like they're right there at each other, that they're in focus. And people are like, well, you've got to adjust it to infinity with those cameras, and it's different. And I'm like, no, when the stars are out, I have to adjust it to film the stars versus what it is for the sun. And so you can set it, it's the exact same focal length. You can set it up manually to film the sun during the day with a solar filter, and set the zoom for a certain length and the focus and everything, have it all set. And it's like when you do the moon, you can use the same settings and it's in focus.
Yeah. Did you hear that they were discontinuing the Nikon P900 and P1000, and allegedly, from what I read, like that whole super zoom type of lens that they were using, they were discontinuing. But then Nikon is now working with NASA to develop cameras for the Artemis missions when they plan to allegedly put men back on the moon.
Yep. And the Artemis mission, one of their other deities, and the name of and doesn't Artemis have something to do with the Eye of Ra as well?
Yeah, it's the female personification of the Eye of Ra, which also is the Djed, which is the pillar of wisdom, which comes from the totality of knowledge and wisdom from Ra. And it's personified in different ways. And at the Book of Acts, they're at, I can't remember what chapter it is, but they're at, they do this this celebratory marathon up the mountain in celebration to Artemis every year back in the day. And it's in this city, I can't remember which city it is, and that Paul visited in Acts, but it was a common thing, because that was where the Temple of Artemis was.
And that's I almost said Athens, but I'm not positive. Nonetheless, it's what the Greeks called this goddess, was Artemis, was it not?
Yeah,
because the Romans called her Diana.
That's right, or the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah,
Lady Liberty.
It's not a religion, but it's all named after false gods. They can't pick any figures from the actual Bible. It's always a false god,
right?
That they name them after every time.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
I'm freezing while I'm trying to do this. So what I find fascinating too is, if we're right about our theory here, we have in Matthew 4 Satan taking Yeshua to the same sphere in the sky, his same home, and then parading that same thing over the sun at his death.
Yeah. Yep.
And
I really hope it was a punishment.
I'm froze up here now.
Is it frozen? Can we try it again?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I got a brand new computer and it's freezing up doing.
WesBlaze, come back. I accidentally removed you from the studio.
Oh no.
Let's
Our
come
ratings are
back.
going down. Quick, come back.
Jump on back in.
All the cool people are leaving. Hurry up, Wes. There he goes.
There it is.
Let me share one more thing just to kind of piggyback on what Josh was asking. If I can bring up this image, I think I got it now. So Josh, you were asking about Artemis. And then if we look here on the bottom of this, now you guys remember the Queen of Heaven is mentioned in Jeremiah. That always puzzled me. I was like, there's no female deities in heaven. You know, all the angels are male, the Father, the Son. What is this Queen of Heaven business? So it never occurred to me to look into the Egyptian mythology of what they refer to as the Eye of Ra is a female, feminine counterpart, that the eye is an extension of Ra's power equated with the disk of the sun, but it often behaves as an independent goddess. And then when you look at what they said that Eye of Ra would manifest as these different goddesses to the Mesopotamians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, they had Inanna, Ishtar, Astaroth, or Astarte, as the scripture will call it. And then Egypt, Isis, Hathor, Bastet, just to name a few. They had quite a few of these female goddesses that it was all the Eye of Ra being personified in different qualities and characteristics. India and Asia had Kali, Durga, Parvati. Greece had Artemis, Hecate, and Aphrodite. And then Rome, Diana, and then the Norse had Freyja, which you guys remember also that the Norse worshipped Odin in Germanic pagan religion. And Odin was a one-eyed, all-seeing, all-father that ruled from a place in the sky called Asgard.
Yep.
So
It's
all
amazing.
there.
It's all the same lore, just different names, different clothing, but it's all the same principle concepts. And like Josh said, we're taking all those names and just putting them onto the modern deception, which is modern day science and NASA programs, space programs. You know, even Elon Musk gets involved with SpaceX, calling his rockets Dragon 1, all this stuff.
Yeah.
So like it just, it doesn't stop. They're not calling them, Christus Victus. They're not calling them, Abraham.
Yeah.
Like none of that. It's never anything that's a positive. They're not even just using some modern positive name. Like, oh, we're going to call this one New York. You know what I mean? We're going to call this rocket MLK. Right.
Yeah.
Right. This is the General Patton rocket we're sending up now. Like they don't even do that. They just always have to go back to the Roman and Greek gods and Egyptian gods. Remember the asteroid that they said was out there that was Rex, King Rex?
Or
No, it was the one. It was like
one.
it was like 2016.
Yeah.
They said it was something Rex, and it meant King.
Dominus? No.
No, it was a satellite they were going to go send to an asteroid, but the satellite they named something Rex. It was, but it was Osiris Rex, is what they named.
Yeah,
it.
Osiris Rex.
Osiris Rex. Yeah, which means King Osiris.
Yep, I'm looking at it right now. Osiris Rex.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that mission they just had during the last eclipse, the APEP, firing 3 rockets, and
whatever happened to those, by the way?
No, I have seen no footage of that, and I need to go and look again, but there was never anything about it. I was expecting people to be getting footage of it. Everybody's cameras are pointed that way. Never, not a peep.
Wait,
out
you
of
mean
that.
NASA says they're going to do something and it's not real? They didn't really do it?
Serpent deity mission during the eclipse, and that's who. And that the other name for APEP was Apophis, and that's who I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson years ago talking about this Earth-killing asteroid named Apophis, and so it's the same deity that they've already named an asteroid about that's supposed to happen. I need to look up when that's happening so we could all be terrified. But yeah, he was talking about that years ago, how close it's going to come to Earth, and it's all these things they had predicted allegedly. But.
Yeah, well, I can't remember the video or the testimony. I don't know if it was Jeranism, if it was Taboo Conspiracy. I can't remember who it was, or if it was just an episode of Glowbusters with a guest on talking about NASA and how that they had supposedly this is going to come across as hearsay, but I'm repeating someone's actual testimony. But they were saying that they spoke with someone at NASA in a private conversation, and there was like basically the NASA guy admitted, no, everything we do is a lie. not just a few things, not
Yeah.
just some things, not the majority of things. Everything we do is a lie. And so it just makes you wonder, like when they say, oh, we're going to throw 3 rockets up, and then the media doesn't cover it. There's no launch pads that are set for a launch date. There's no, you know what I'm saying? Usually every time anything's launched from any of these centers, there's like crowds waiting out to film the rocket going up.
Right.
We didn't see any of that. I didn't see any of that. Maybe I was wrong, but I still didn't hear anything about it. And so it's just like they have gotten so used to just being able to throw anything out there and then change their story or not follow through or not fulfill their obligation that nobody calls them on it. You remember, it was Eric Holder. Remember the head of NASA? His name was Eric something. I don't think he's the head of NASA anymore. What was his name? It was 2019.
Was that during the
Ianson?
Mars?
Eric Smith, program science. No, that's not his name.
Eric Ianson, currently the Deputy Director of Planetary Science. No. Eric R. Christian, Senior Research. Eric
It could be
Sim.
the deputy director. That might be him. But his name was Eric, and he was standing before some sort of Senate committee, and they were asking him, "What are you doing with this money we appropriate in the budget for you?" It was the most awkward. I wish I could find the clip. I can't find the
love
clip.
that clip. That was epic. He got destroyed.
Yeah,
Like,
and they kept
where
asking
are you
him,
going?
"What are you doing with this?" And he's like, "Well, we plan to go back to the moon." He's like, "You do plan to go back to the moon? Like when?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Well, we haven't set a date yet." We're like, "Well,
Yeah. What's your next step? Is what he kept asking him. He's like,
yeah.
well,
What's
the,
your next
the
step?"
moon is the next step. But what's in between there? You know, it's like there was no answer.
Yeah.
It was very awkward.
Because it was the appropriations committee for the budget, and they're like sitting there looking at the $22 billion about to hand NASA, and they're going, "What are you guys doing with this money?" And they didn't have an answer for them. It's the wildest clip that you could ever. I need to find it. It's wild.
Yeah, it's
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the APEP, the acronym was chosen because the APEP is also the name of the serpent god from ancient Egyptian cosmology who pursued the sun god Ra and every so often nearly consumed him, resulting in an eclipse. That's from nasa.gov as to why they called it the atmospheric perturbations around the eclipse path, or APEP. They also say, APEP was the serpent devil of mist, darkness, storm, and night. And APEP was seen as a giant snake or serpent, leading to such titles as Serpent from the Nile and Evil Dragon. All that's from
And supposedly, from time to time, Ra used his staff to poke the serpent away from his boat of 1,000,000 years. Wow,
That's
it's crazy. It's crazy. So
it is.
So yeah, guys, this topic is just like, this is endless. We're going to turn into our own Glowbusters episode here, which, that's what Uncommon Ground is. So if you guys haven't already subscribed to WesBlazeMuziK, the link is in the video description below. Be sure to click that. Go subscribe, because that's where we have done 2 full seasons, 50 episodes of Uncommon Ground. Actually, more than that because we have some in between stuff, but lots and lots of content of Uncommon Ground. So it's attacking this biblical cosmology topic from a biblical point of view. So Josh at FUB, he does the same stuff on his channel, and he has a ton of awesome content that you can find there. So be sure to subscribe to Founded Earth Brothers, and you have to type that in the YouTube search bar. You can't type in FEB. You have to type in Founded Earth Brothers, and that's what will actually have his channel pop up. So guys, I got to take off for tonight. WesBlaze, this video was awesome. I think you did a great job in the production. And Josh, I want to have you back on soon so we can talk about your new project you're doing and help you guys get funded and get promoted if possible. So
yeah, that would
And
be
we're
a
getting
blessing.
ready to, amen. Yeah, absolutely. Shout out. And we're getting ready to start gearing up towards setting a date for season 3 of Uncommon Ground as well, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're getting there.
Hurry up.
And hopefully you'll be able to watch it on Lighthouse, and it will be uncensored and unrestricted on Lighthouse. So that's also in the works very soon coming. And then that's also where you're going to be able to find first episode of Days of Noah. And that's where you're going to be able to buy your comic book of Days of Noah as well. So we're excited about that. And episode 2 is already underway. So there's a lot of cool things that are coming down the pike, a lot of behind the scenes. People are working on stuff. WesBlaze even put me on to Mikey Jenny's new project he's been working on with Little Light Studios today. And it looks like they're making great strides to make good Christian-friendly content as well. God's been blessing them in their own sphere. No pun intended.
And the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, Josh, you want to say anything before we take off?
Oh no, this was a blessing. It's glad. I feel like we haven't been united in a long time, so it's good to team up with you guys, the Kingdom crew. And for those of you who saw, this video, Wes's video, go watch it in 1080p. I mean, go watch it in its entirety too, straight through. I've learned new stuff. I've been kind of on the fence about this topic, and there's a lot of confusion, and the math is over my head, and a lot of things that were quoted and put in the video definitely destroy the globe, and have opened my eyes to some different things I hadn't thought of yet. So really phenomenal, and some creepy stuff too. The baby inside the sphere kind of got me. I was like, that is creepy.
Oh, I was gonna talk about that. Yeah. I mean, what is the typical personification of angels? Is the cherubs, the babies.
Yeah. That's true.
And they put that in the sphere. Isn't that crazy?
They did.
They did the same thing in the movie Matrix Revolution, when the big circular ball filled with spikes came up in front of Neo at the end of the movie, and it's a cherub little baby face that pops out of it.
Oh yeah.
Right. I forgot about that.
Yep.
What in the world? Yep, that was a commercial that played for the Super Bowl in 2023, and it was a commercial for a gig that U2 was going to perform at the Sphere in Las Vegas, which is Sean's covered it before, big Sphere auditorium, and they plan on putting those all around the world, don't they?
Yeah.
It's like a temple.
It was pyramids. Now they've switched to spheres.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're definitely pushing the sphere idea everywhere. So, WesBlaze, anything before we go?
Love you guys. Shabbat shalom from under the 7 domes. We appreciated each and every one of you guys. You could have been anywhere in the whole flat world with us, but anywhere in the whole flat world, but you were here with us tonight. We thank you for that. Much love, guys. Thank you, Sean.
Awesome.
Enjoyed it. Thank you,
Thank
Josh,
you,
for joining us.
Appreciate you guys for coming on tonight. Thank you everyone for watching. Share this if you like it, and we'll see you next time.
Bless one, bless him. Said if the earth is something you can invest in. He said the earth takes shape like clay to the seal when it's pressed in. Heaven stretched out like a tent to rest in. The sky is the limit.
No, literally could the firmament hit you, yeah. The sky the limit.